Oh, come on, girl, just a bit more. You're almost there with your baby. The Oregon sky hung heavy with gray clouds, like it was holding its breath, ready to unleash a torrent of rain. Sarah Miller, a 32-year-old forest ranger, adjusted her green baseball cap and trudged along a muddy trail in Siuslaw National Forest. Her boots crunched against fallen pine needles, blending with the whistle of wind slicing through towering old-growth trees. Beside her were her two colleagues, Tom, a grizzled middle-aged guy with a silver handlebar mustache, and Lena, a rookie ranger bubbling with excitement as she snapped photos of a massive fern with her beat-up phone. Sarah took a deep breath, the scent of damp earth and pine sap filling her lungs. She loved this forest, loved how it felt both mysterious and familiar, like an old friend who always had a new secret to share. Siuslaw, nestled near Oregon's coastal wildlife refuge, was home to countless creatures: black bears, bald eagles, and most recently, a troop of western lowland gorillas reintroduced through an international conservation program. But today, something felt off. The air seemed heavier, like the forest was whispering a warning. "Sarah, you hear that?" Tom stopped short, cocking his head. "Sounds like something. Not a bird or a bear." Sarah frowned, straining her ears. She'd been a ranger for nearly a decade, long enough to know when a sound didn't belong. The forest was always alive with strange noises, distant waves crashing on the coast, branches snapping, or owls hooting in the dark. But this was different. A low, guttural moan, almost human but rawer, like a cry for help from something ancient. "Something's wrong," she said, her hand resting on the radio clipped to her belt. "Let's check it out." They veered off the trail, plunging into the dense heart of the forest where sunlight barely slipped through the canopy. Sarah led the way, her sharp eyes scanning every bush, every mark in the dirt. To her, Siuslaw was like an old book, each page hiding a story, a secret. When they reached a clearing among towering Douglas firs, Sarah froze, her heart pounding. Standing before them was a massive gorilla, its black fur gleaming, muscles rippling like a living statue. Its eyes, deep, soulful, locked onto Sarah's, not with aggression but with something else. She knew about the Gorilla Reintroduction Program, a project to protect western lowland gorillas from poaching in Africa. But she'd never seen one this close, especially a fully grown male. The gorilla, whom Sarah would later name Koda, didn't growl or posture. Instead, it let out a soft, pleading moan and raised a massive hand, pointing toward a thicket deep in the forest. "Back up!" Tom hissed, his hand hovering over the tranquilizer gun at his hip. "This thing could be dangerous, Sarah." But Sarah raised a hand to stop him, her gaze fixed on Koda. There was something in those eyes, not rage but desperation, like a father begging for help. "He's trying to tell us something," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Lena, grab the first aid kit. Tom, stay here, but don't do anything yet." "Sarah, you're nuts!" Tom shook his head, but stayed put, his grip tight on the gun. Lena, nervous but quick, darted to their packs for the medical supplies. Sarah stepped forward, her heart racing but her steps steady. She'd never faced a gorilla like this, but her gut told her Cota wasn't a threat. "Hey, big guy," she said softly, like she was coaxing a stray dog. "Show me what's going on, okay?" Cota studied her, as if weighing her intentions. Then he turned, moving slowly toward the thicket, glancing back to make sure Sarah followed. She took a deep breath, gave Tom and Lena a final look, and trailed after him. It felt like stepping into a strange fairy tale, where humans and wild beasts spoke a wordless language. Koda led her through narrow trails, past a small stream glinting under weak sunlight. The thick canopy blocked out the sky, leaving only faint patches of light on the ground. Sarah stepped carefully over gnarled roots, keeping her distance but never losing sight of Koda. She wondered what could drive a male gorilla to act like this. She'd read that gorillas were intelligent, living in tight-knit family groups, but one seeking out a human for help. That was unheard of. After about 20 minutes, Koda stopped at a shallow creek bed where water trickled over mossy rocks. There, Sarah saw a sight that twisted her heart. A female gorilla, visibly pregnant, lay groaning on the damp grass. One of her legs was caught in a poacher's trap, a rusty steel snare biting deep into her flesh, blood staining the grass beneath. The female, whom Sarah would later call Mira, panted heavily. Her eyes clouded with pain, but still lifting to meet Koda's, seeking comfort. Sarah knelt a few yards away, careful not to startle her. "Oh, God," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Tom, Lena, get over here now! We need to cut this trap off!" Tom and Lena rushed over, carrying the first aid kit and metal cutters. But as they approached, Koda roared, positioning himself like a living wall in front of Mira. His black fur bristled, his hands thumping the ground in warning. "Easy, big guy," Sarah said, raising her hands, her eyes never leaving his. "We're here to help her, I promise." As if sensing her sincerity, Koda stepped back, still watchful, his fists clenched like he was ready to defend Mira at any moment. Sarah signaled Tom to start cutting the trap while she and Lena prepared bandages. "Careful, Tom," she said, her voice low but sharp. "That trap's old but nasty. If she jerks, it'll get worse." Tom nodded, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chilly forest air. He knelt, snipping the steel links one by one, each clank echoing like a heartbeat in the stillness. Mira whimpered, her body trembling, eyes squeezed shut in agony. Sarah knelt near her head, whispering, "Hang in there, girl. We're getting you out." She wasn't sure if Mira understood, but her soothing tone seemed to ease the gorilla's tension, her breathing slowing slightly. After 10 tense minutes, the trap finally came free. Blood oozed from the wound, but Lena quickly bandaged it, using antiseptic from the kit. "She's lost blood, but the cut's not too deep," Lena said, her voice shaky with a mix of adrenaline and relief. "She'll be okay, I think." Then Mira let out a louder groan, her body convulsing violently. Sarah realized instantly she was going into labor. "Holy crap! She's giving birth!" she shouted, eyes wide. "Lena, grab more clean bandages! Tom, radio the rescue team! Tell them to bring a vet, now!" Tom scrambled to contact the ranger station, his voice urgent over the radio. "We need backup, Stat. Got a gorilla giving birth, mother's injured. Send a vet to the Western Creek in the refuge." Meanwhile, Sarah and Lena stayed with Mira, trying to keep her calm. Sarah had never seen a gorilla birth, but she'd helped injured animals before. Deer, birds, you name it. She grabbed Lena's hand, saying, "We've got this. Just stay cool." Mira's breathing grew labored, each contraction shaking her body. Koda hovered nearby, letting out anxious grunts, his hands pounding the ground softly as if to chase away his fear. Sarah knelt beside Mira, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder, feeling the raw strength and fragility beneath. "You've got this, Mira," she whispered, naming her in that moment, like a vow. "Your baby's gonna be fine." After nearly an hour, guided by a vet's instructions over the radio, Mira gave birth to a tiny gorilla, its fur soft as silk. Sarah and Lena carefully cleaned the baby with sterile cloths, placing it in Mira's arms, Exhausted but alive, Mira cradled her newborn, her misty eyes glowing with joy and relief. Koda stepped forward, touching the baby's head with his massive fingers, then looked at Sarah. In that moment, she felt a connection, wordless but stronger than any language. The rescue team arrived soon after, bringing a vet and medical gear. Mira was moved to a safe area in the refuge to recover, along with her baby named Tala, light in a local Pacific Northwest language, by the scientists. Koda followed his family, but before leaving, he turned to Sarah one last time, his eyes etching her into his memory. She smiled, raising a hand in a small wave. "Take care of them, big guy," she said, her voice catching. In the weeks that followed, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Koda, Mira, and Tala. She checked their progress through refuge reports. Mira's wound was healing, and Tala was growing, often seen clinging to her mother's fur, eyes wide with curiosity. But the poacher's trap gnawed at Sarah. It wasn't random. She'd seen signs of illegal activity in Siuslaw before. Tire tracks, cut wires, patches of clear-cut trees. She was determined to find out who was behind it. Sarah dove into an investigation, teaming up with Tom, Lena, and refuge scientists. They mapped trap locations, analyzed steel samples, and set up hidden cameras in suspicious areas. After sleepless nights, Sarah uncovered a lead, a poaching ring supplying rare animals to the black market, operating under the guise of a logging company. She reported it to the authorities, but their slow response frustrated her. "We can't just wait," she told Tom during a team meeting. "If we don't act, there'll be more Miras out there." She worked tirelessly, organizing extra patrols and rallying the local community to protect the forest. She visited schools, sharing Koda and Mira's story, hoping to inspire kids. Their eyes lit up hearing about the gorilla who led rangers to save his mate. And Sarah realized this wasn't just her story or Koda's. It was about a bigger bond between people and nature. But deep down, Sarah carried a fear. She knew poachers didn't give up easily. They had money, weapons, and no qualms about retaliation. She'd heard of rangers threatened or attacked for crossing wildlife traffickers. On patrols, she double-checked her gear, always carrying a radio and a small knife tucked in her boot. She didn't tell Tom or Lena about her unease, but sometimes, alone in the forest, she felt eyes on her. One sweltering summer afternoon, Sarah, Tom, and Lena patrolled near a spot where they'd placed hidden cameras. After months of work, the cameras finally caught clear footage. Poachers in camouflage, setting traps and hauling cages with wildlife. Among them, Sarah recognized a man with a viper tattoo on his neck, a guy she'd seen in a nearby town, posing as a logging company worker. "We've got enough evidence," Sarah said, reviewing the video on her tablet. "Clear faces, license plates, them setting traps. If we hand this to the feds, they're done." Tom nodded, but his eyes were wary. "Be careful, Sarah. These guys aren't amateurs. If they know we have this, they won't sit still." Sarah pressed her lips together, knowing he was right, but she couldn't back down. "We have to do what's right," she said. "For Mira, for Tala, for this forest." They kept patrolling, gathering more evidence. But as they neared a dense area by the creek, Sarah heard a twig snap. She signaled Tom and Lena to stop, her hand gripping the radio. "Someone's here," she whispered. Before they could react, a group of men emerged from the bushes, dressed in black, clutching hunting rifles. The man with the viper tattoo led them, a cold smirk on his face. "Ranger Miller, right?" he said, his voice low and menacing. "You've been too nosy." Sarah stepped in front of Tom and Lena, keeping her voice steady. You're breaking the law. We have proof of your poaching. Drop your weapons and surrender. It'll be easier." He laughed, raising his rifle. "You think your little videos will save you? We've been watching you for a while. You and your team aren't leaving this forest." Instead of firing, he gestured to his men. One pulled out a gas can, pouring it over dry branches around them. "No need for blood," he said, striking a match. "A forest fire will clean this up. Weather's hot, nobody'll question it." The flames erupted instantly, spreading through the dry leaves and twigs. Thick smoke choked the air, making Sarah cough. "Run!" she yelled, but the fire encircled them, cutting off every escape. Tom and Lena scrambled through the haze, but the flames closed in, crackling like a grim laugh. Sarah dropped to her knees, clutching her head, despair washing over her. "It can't end like this," she whispered, thinking of Koda, Mira, and Tala. But as hope faded, a powerful roar cut through the smoke. From the shadows, a massive figure emerged. Koda, his fur singed, but his eyes resolute. Sarah stared, stunned. She hadn't known that since she saved Mira and Tala, Koda had been watching her team from afar, a silent guardian. And now he was here, right when she needed him most. Koda advanced, letting out low grunts, his huge hand gesturing toward a path in the forest, as if saying, "Follow me." Sarah grabbed Tom and Lena's hands, shouting, "Go with him!" Koda knows the way. Confused but desperate, they followed Koda through the choking smoke. The flames licked at their heels, but Koda moved swiftly, guiding them through narrow trails Sarah didn't know existed. She realized he was leading them to a vine-covered cliff. With a soft growl, he pushed the vines aside, revealing a narrow tunnel through the rock, a secret escape only a forest native would know. Sarah, Tom, and Lena squeezed through, Koda behind them. The air inside was cool, a stark contrast to the blistering heat outside. After a few minutes, they emerged in a clear area, far from the fire, where fresh air flooded their lungs. Sarah collapsed, gasping, and looked at Koda. "Thank you," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. Koda stood there, his gaze gentle, then glanced back toward the forest, as if ensuring his family was safe. Sarah grabbed her radio, calling the fire crew. "We're safe. Send units to the Western Creek now. Arson fire, deliberate." The fire team arrived quickly, containing the blaze before it consumed the forest. Sarah, Tom, and Lena were taken to the ranger station, where they handed over the camera footage to federal agents. The clear images of the poachers, setting traps, starting the fire, were undeniable. Within weeks, the poaching ring was dismantled, the viper-tattooed man sentenced to a long prison term, and Siuslaw placed under tighter protection. Sarah and Koda's story spread across Oregon, then beyond. Newspapers dubbed her the Guerrilla Whisperer, a nickname she brushed off with a laugh. She used the attention to advocate for conservation, ensuring Siuslaw and its guerrillas were safeguarded for the long haul. She worked with scientists to monitor Koda, Mira, and Tala, but always from a distance, respecting their freedom. Sarah kept on as a ranger, carrying a new belief that trust could bridge the gap between humans and nature. She'd visit the refuge, sometimes spotting Koda in the distance, standing among the green canopy, his eyes saying, "We're friends." Tala, now bigger, would peer at her curiously, as if wondering about the woman who saved her mother. One crisp fall afternoon, Sarah stood on a hill overlooking Siuslaw's Emerald Valley. The wind carried the scent of pine and sea salt. She thought of Koda, Mira, and Tala, how they'd changed her life. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice blending with the breeze. The forest answered with rustling leaves, A promise they'd always be there, together.